President Trump has already implemented tariff policies, but new controversy surrounding a proposed tariff stimulus has Republicans breaking ranks. What's happening? Is it working? And will it make America affordable again? Here's the point. In April this year, President Trump introduced Liberation Day as a broad sweep of reciprocal tariffs on all U.S. imports to counteract America's long-standing trade imbalance. These tariffs included a 10% baseline on U.S. imports across the board, with higher tariffs on countries like China, Canada, Mexico, and others around the world that account for over $4 trillion in U.S. imports every year. The economic freefall that most economists promised would happen never materialized, though. In the immediate wake of the tariff announcements, many nations negotiated new trade deals with the United States. Others asked for more time. The EU, the UK, Japan, South Korea, and several other nations had new trade deals in effect by July 31st. China has asked for more time and has shown itself willing to negotiate. Make no mistake, these tariffs were primarily about economic leverage to give the United States better negotiating terms for American manufacturers of goods rather than giving the government more tax revenue. For decades, America opened its markets while trade partners protected theirs. American workers were exposed to global competition, while foreign labor was subsidized. And China overtook the U.S. as the world's leading manufacturer when Obama was president. Trump's entire premise for tariffs was simple. Free trade doesn't work when only one side follows the rules and when only one side wins. But here's the rub today. The Trump administration now proposes sending tariff rebates back to the American people as stimulus checks. Republican debt hawks who supported tariffs as an economic leveraging tool are breaking ranks, arguing we cannot stimulus check our way back to middle-class American prosperity while drowning in $38 trillion in debt and devaluing our dollar. So how should we think about this? And here's the point. First, Trump's tariff rationale addressed the long-standing trade imbalance between the U.S. and partner nations. Tariffs aren't some radical new experiment, but something the U.S. used for almost 150 years. The first major bill passed by Congress was the Tariff Act of 1789. Historically, tariffs funded up to 95% of the federal government before the federal income tax was introduced in 1913. Under Presidents Warren Harding and Calvin Coolidge, with the Fordney-McCumber tariff, American GDP growth from 1922 to 1927, 100 years ago from today, hit 7%. That's an all-time record. But for more than 40 years, globalist policies, specifically free trade policies, neutralized America's comparative advantage in manufacturing and hollowed out American industry and labor, shrinking the American middle class. We were told American workers couldn't compete globally, but that simply was not true. They ignored the realities of an efficient, well-educated, and productive workforce. They ignored the highly complex nature of modern manufacturing and the infrastructure required to produce it. They also ignored the realities that our trading partners weren't playing by the same rules. Globalist dogma and free trade orthodoxy told Americans we couldn't compete, and that wasn't true. Take China, for example. China now has highly sophisticated and advanced technology, similar to the U.S. because it came from the U.S. Their labor costs continue to rise. Instead of competing on a level playing field, China manipulates their currency, steals intellectual property, forces technology transfers, provides massive subsidies for state-owned industry, and operates with major humanitarian labor violations. Cheaper isn't actually cheaper when it comes at such a high cost. The result? Untold trillions of dollars in stolen property, job loss, unrealized GDP, and national security risks. Remember, tariffs were meant for corrective action. There's no free trade when only one side follows the rules. Second, the doomsday predictions of the global market meltdown after tariffs never materialized. When Trump implemented tariffs in 2018 to 2020, economists predicted catastrophe, 10 to 25% price spikes, massive inflation, supply chain collapse, and even economic recession. Those predictions were wrong, and the Biden administration maintained some of the tariff policies. Consumer inflation stayed historically low during Trump's first term before COVID and Biden inflation. Price increases were modest and targeted. Many companies absorbed soft cost, adjusted supply chains, or shifted production. Some industries experienced competitive reshoring rather than runaway prices. The American economy proved far more resilient than experts predicted. This doesn't mean tariffs do not come at a price, but the apocalyptic warnings from those who've been wrong about trade for decades deserve our skepticism. Third, today's consumer price inflation is a government spending and deficit crisis, not a tariff problem. Let's be honest. Tariffs did not create today's inflation. Reckless deficit spending, unfunded entitlement programs, supply chain shocks, and labor shortages all contributed to higher prices that consumers pay for goods. During Trump's first term, we had low inflation with tariff pressure. After Trump, we had high inflation due to the Federal Reserve Bank printing trillions of dollars. The inflation crisis persists because our government's addiction to spending money we simply do not have. The middle class is crushed by rising costs of housing, energy, and food. Tariffs aren't the reason why inflation hasn't come down. The problem is not having sound money policy. Finally, tariff stimulus or tariff rebates will not solve our $2 trillion annual deficit. Trump's proposal to send tariff revenue back as stimulus checks might sound appealing to some, but that will not address inflation. It will only further the problem. Large-scale tariffs are meant to get better trade deals. They can't overcome a $2 trillion annual deficit. They don't slow mandatory spending. They don't address entitlement insolvency. They don't reform congressional omnibus spending when they run out of money to run the government. Here's what should happen. Any revenue made from tariffs should go to the national debt, not stimulus checks. If people need stimulus check relief, why not remove the tariff entirely so the American consumer will not pay the tax on the import? The best way to solve America's affordability crisis is by going back to sound money principles that stabilize the American dollar. If we strengthen the dollar, then every dollar earned by hardworking American families can go further to filling up their gas tank or filling up their grocery cart. There's nothing more America first than policies that promote American affordability for American working families. We need to stop printing money, cut government spending, reform entitlements, and make housing, food, and energy affordable for every American. We need policies that reward private ownership, hard work, innovation without government handouts. We need to rebuild American manufacturing using American workers without bankrupting America's future or American families. We can actually do it all in America, but it'll take courage and common sense to at least try.